So the big thing that we're going to be talking about in this video, which is one of my favorite topics, is how to scale your business. So to give you guys a little bit of background for people that are new to this channel, in the last 2.5 years, I've been able to scale from 0 to over 50 cars in the business. And really what I want to show you guys is what was my mindset going through that scaling? What were the steps? What were the processes to be able to get from the 0, honestly, to over 50 cars. Hey guys, it's Peter with Car Rental Coach. If you're looking to boost your Airbnb profits, or if you want to build a rental car fleet just like we have, then this is the channel for you. Make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any videos. Also, if you're really looking to take your rental car business to the next level, I want you to go to carrentalcoach.com. On that website, it's basically going to tell me if you qualify to be able to work with us. If you do, you'll actually be getting on a call with me. Love to talk to you, kind of figure out what your goals are, what are your aspirations, and see if there's an opportunity for us to work together. When I first started the business, probably like a lot of people that are watching this, I was nervous about it. I really didn't know. Now, I've started other businesses before, so it reminds me of the old adage, which is half of the battle for having a successful business. Well, I wouldn't say half of the battle. I'll say 10% of the battle is just starting it. I would say the other 90% of the battle is actual execution. But starting it is a really big deal because most people are too afraid to even get out there and just get it going, right? And of course, when I started, I was nervous about all of the initial things. Now, I paid to be in mastermind groups and coaching and all those things because those are super important to me. I'd rather learn from somebody's mistakes. But even doing those, I still made my own mistakes. But really in the beginning, the first big things that I got down, number one, it was getting things I talked about in all the other videos, my descriptions, my pictures, my pricing correct. Other big thing was storage. That was huge to kind of figure out where the car is going to be, where are people going to pick it up. Also, all my internal systems, how am I communicating with all my guests? How am I making sure that they're getting the best experience possible? And another huge one was dealing with insurance and different things through Turo. So I'll be diving into some of these topics and more in this video. Really, the first big one to get into is, let's talk about storage. So when it comes to storage, of course, you guys have all heard it. When I started, contracted out with a parking lot at the airport. Now, that's all well and good when you have a couple cars. I say a couple cars, you have maybe 2 to 4 cars, that works. The problem is once you start to get above 10 cars, a partnership like that might get a little bit more pricey and it significantly eats into what your profits are. So what I was thinking at that point was it's like, okay, once I got to 10 cars, this is getting a little bit expensive. I'll tell you some of the options that I considered and then the option that I actually ended up going with. So one of the ones that I considered was, okay, I can go with public parking lots. When I say public parking lots, as in I can put the cars in like a Walmart parking lot or a Target parking lot. I didn't really like that for scaling for the main reasons when I called the management companies who, let's say like Target's in a plaza. There's a management company that takes care of that whole plaza. Now I could have just put the cars there without asking, but I didn't want to deal with any sort of legal trouble, right? So I'd call them, ask like, hey, would this be okay if I paid you 25, 50 bucks a spot? The majority of them said no. And the main reason why is because they're like, we don't want to be liable for if something happens to your car, somebody steals your car, somebody hits into it. They just didn't want to have any part of the liability aspect. So that was one that I looked into. Another one was private parking lots. Now, of course, that's kind of what I'm partnered up with. And I still have a partnership with them now by the local airport near me. That would be considered a private lot. It's a lot that's owned by a private person. Now, I also looked into partnering up with co-working spaces. When I say co-working spaces, as in they not specifically to have an office, but specifically to use their parking lot. Because co-working spaces, they have these massive parking lots and the majority of the spaces aren't used. So when I talked to them, they were pretty open to it and it wasn't a bad idea. But honestly, this is the nice thing is when I ended up partnering up with George, him and his wife, they actually own a car dealership and that really turned out to be the best place to be able to store the cars. Now, keep in mind when you are storing your cars, ideally the cars are going to be rented out for a majority of the time, right? Let's say that you have 25 cars. Yes, you will need 25 spaces, but the majority of the time, the 25 spaces will not be occupied all of the time, ideally. You might have 10 cars that are there ideally at a time, or maybe 5 cars that are there ideally. So just kind of keep that in mind when you are looking at spaces and when you are negotiating with different businesses. Because let's say you're negotiating with a private lot and you're like, oh, I have 25 cars. Make sure that you convey to that person that you are not constantly taking up 25 spaces because your cars are actively being rented out. So let them know that it's like, okay, it might be 25 cars, but maybe only 5 to 10 spaces at a time. it puts their mind a little bit at ease to let them know that their customers are still going to have a place to park, and also it's still a benefit to you. And the biggest benefit they get is that they get paid. Okay, so two other options that I forgot to mention in reference to where to store your vehicles. One is going to be basically warehouses. Now, there are kind of pros and cons to warehouses, but the pros is that they always have parking spots just because they have a lot of employees, things like that. So not a bad idea. The only thing that I didn't like about warehouses is that no one's really watching your car, and typically where the warehouses I looked at, they didn't have cameras, or there's just not a lot of supervision, which makes it more likely that if somebody knows that you have this business, they might go in and break into 3 cars that you have sitting at once. Now you have to replace windows and all of those things. Now, another option that's a good one is basically office parking lots. So maybe a medium-sized business or a small business where, let's say that they have 20 spots. If you're only at 10 cars, well, then that might be a realistic option for you, because 2 to 3 cars might be there at a time, and that would be a good place for you actually to put the cars. So a big thing that I want to talk about in reference to when you're looking at these storage spaces as well is accessibility. This is why I'm a big fan of private parking lots, because the accessibility is typically pretty easy. Like, it's a road that's pretty central to a main road. It's not necessarily off the beaten path. That's why I was a little bit weary of warehouses too, because warehouses are never right off of a main road, right? Like, they're a little bit where you got to take a detour, or they're just a little bit far off of the beaten path, and it makes it hard for people to find it on a navigation standpoint, where the private parking lots might be a little bit easier, such as like the co-working or office spaces, or even like the one that I partnered up with, something that's close to the airport, something they can put into their GPS. It's super easy to find. Boom, bam, they're there. Pick up the car, drop off the car. It makes it relatively easy for them. And the last thing in reference to storage that you want to think about is future expansion. And I've kind of hinted on it a little bit. When I'm saying future expansions in office spaces, right? That might be great if it's let's say that the lot has 10 spaces, you only have 5 cars. That might be ideal for you, because you might only have 1 car, 2 car that's ever really going to be sitting in those spaces. So it works for the business and it works for you. But if you're the type of person where, I don't want to have 5 cars forever, I want to have 25 cars, I want to have 30 cars, then you really need to be looking to the future to say, where can you store 25 or 30 cars? That's why, again, to reiterate the point, I think a private parking lot's great, because specifically lots where they hold cars, because that is the whole reason for them buying it, is that they have a lot of storage space. Now, on the contrary, you're sitting on a little bit of cash, or you're a well-seasoned business person, then you could buy your own lot. That's also an idea. That way you could get all the wonderful tax write-offs that come along with it. Now, I'm not a tax professional, so I can't recommend that specifically for tax purposes, but it could be a great thing for you. So the next really big piece to a puzzle when you're scaling a business is the relationships that you're building. Now, kind of like how I was talking with storage with the private parking, that's a relationship that you have to build with whoever owns the parking lot. So on the contrary, when it comes to relationships, a big one that you want to have is with some sort of mechanic or with a maintenance type of business. And the reason why is not because your cars are going to break down all the time, of course, especially if you buy the cars right, but more so when it comes to routine maintenance. So when the car needs tires, when the car needs brakes, when the car needs any sort of general engine servicing, that you want to have a place where you can take the car, and this is kind of a double whammy, because of course you want to get the best pricing, but more importantly, you want the best quality of service, right? So that's where you want to do a little bit of research, find out what place that's near you that has the best reviews. But that is a crucial part to the puzzle, because the longer that your cars are off the platform getting service, that's the less money that you're making that month off of that car. Now, if you have a great relationship with somebody, you go over to them and say, hey, Jim, I have 2 cars that need to get their tires and brakes on. And Jim knows you, he knows that you're gonna pay on time, he knows that you're reliable, he might turn those cars over in a day. Now, your cars are only off the platform for 1 day, you get them back on there and you're making money. Now, another big relationship that you want to have, so maintenance is another one. Another huge one right now, which this is a tough one, is body shops. Very, very difficult to get into body shops right now. That's why you want to start building this relationship as soon as you start the business. Other big thing is that nobody likes to talk about it. It is something that happens in the business that, hey, somebody's driving down the road, having a good time. Maybe they get rear-ended. Maybe they brush up against another car. Maybe they brush up against a guardrail. The car is going to have, some some body issues where you have to go and get it fixed. As I'm saying right now, when I'm saying it's hard to get into body shops, it might take right now 20 to 30 days just to get your car into a body shop. And you don't want it where a renter picks up a car. Imagine you're all excited, you go on vacation, you're visiting, let's say you're visiting Dallas, right? You get your car and the car has a massive scrape on the back bumper, or even on the front of the bumper, it has a scrape. You don't really want to drive that car, because then when you're driving around visiting all your friends, it looks like you cheaped out on the car. That you were just like, I'll kind of take any car. It really doesn't matter what it looks like. And since it means something to your renters, it should mean something to you. So definitely want to make sure that you have that relationship with the body shop, because maybe instead of 30 days, you could get it in 14 days. And it's not what anybody wants to hear, but I'd rather be realistic with you guys kind of about the time frames when it comes to getting into these body shops and things like that. Now, another huge relationship that you want to have is with an insurance company. Now, this is double whammy. You want to have your off rental insurance, which is specifically when the vehicle is not being rented through a ride sharing app. So you want to have a relationship with them so that maybe if you do have any problems whether if it's a staff member that's driving a car to get it cleaned or to get the tires rotated, or whether if it's you driving the car to do those things, and let's say, God forbid, somebody hits you from the back or you get hit from the side, then at least that car can be taken care of. You have a rep that you can talk to, and you know that you're in good hands. On the contrary, you want to build a good relationship with whatever rideshare company that you're dealing with insurance's platform. And the reason why is that you want it where you can resolve claims quickly. You don't want it to be where it takes 3 months from the time a car gets into an accident from you getting the money to be able to purchase another car. Ideally, you'd like it to be a month thing, from the time the car gets an accident to the time that you get the money. And really, when it comes to the insurance, the company that we work with, specifically Turo, their insurance, they'll get back to you pretty quickly, typically within a day or two. It really comes down to you getting back to them. And I want to make sure I preface this because, of course, when your car gets into an accident, you're going to be upset. We're all human beings. We all have emotions. Because, what are you thinking about? You're like, man, that's cash flow that I'm losing out on. I've been using that car. It's been bringing me cash flow for 12 months. I was going to take my family on vacation. Now that it got into an accident, I have to wait another month or two to be able to do it. Or you're thinking, I was really growing this business. I wanted to hit a certain milestone by this month. So you're going to be a little bit upset about the car. That insurance person is not the one to be upset about. Even if the conversation starts to turn in a way where you're talking to them and you're like, oh yeah, this renter was driving and they rear-ended somebody. Even if the rep starts to phrase in a way where they're like, well, did you take the pictures within 24 hours? Was the car properly maintained? They're asking you those questions not to not cover it, but to make sure that you did everything right. And that's the nice thing about being on a channel like this, is that we're going to teach you how to make sure that your car has everything in order so that you don't have to deal with these issues of the car not being covered. But back to my original point, that is not the time to get mad with that rep. And I'll tell you why. Let's say you're having a conversation, they're asking you, well, the person got rear-ended, were the pictures taken? You snap back and you're like, of course the pictures were taken. I always take my pictures the right way. Why would you even ask me that? Now that rep is gonna get a little bit defensive. They're human too. They're gonna be like, well, Peter, take it easy. I'm just trying to do my job. Next thing you know, I shoot right back at them. Well, I know you're trying to do your job, but when have I ever had any issues with this? They might not tell you, but they're gonna put a mark on your profile and say, Peter tends to get a little bit aggressive when he has any sort of accidents or things like that. Now, when the next rep goes and looks at your profile when you have an accident, they're gonna have this preconceived notion about you or preconceived notion about me in this example, that I'm aggressive. So now when they go to talk to me, they're already going to have a certain tonality and things where it might be a little bit harder to work with. The insurance people that work with the car sharing companies, you want them to be your friends because they're the ones that are going to be giving you the money to, if you have a car note, boom, you can pay off your car note. If you don't have a car note, then you can use that money to go get another car. So you want to make sure that you treat those people with the utmost respect. You want to be kind to them, and you want to make sure that you can get that process done as quickly as possible. And as they say, everybody likes to deal with people that they like. So the nicer that you are and make yourself more likable, then they'll want to work with you. So another relationship that you want to form, and I can't stress this enough, as soon as you start the business, is with a financial institution. So when I'm saying a financial institution, what do I mean? I mean a bank, I mean a credit union, I mean some sort of private lender. And the reason why I'm saying this is that when you first start your business, you have no track record, right? You have no numbers, you have no nothing. All you might have is a business plan and a dream, which is a great thing to have. But if you want to really expand your business and scale, a big part of that is that you have to have money to be able to scale. Well, if you don't have the money on hand and you want to scale quickly, easiest way to get money is to go through a financing source. Now, financing sources will not give you money unless you have a track record. One of two ways that you could go about this. Let's say that you're a person, you have a pretty good credit score. You could go through your personal financing and finance vehicles that way, of course. But even better, let's say that you're a well-seasoned entrepreneur or business owner. Then maybe you could get financing through another one of your businesses and loan it over to your car rental business. But if you're like the majority of us that start out, you're like, okay, I want this business to be self-sustainable. Ideally, you'd like to go out, get a couple cars, show that you have good business practices. Show that you're not spending the money on stupid things when you have a profit. The money's getting reinvested back into the business. There's not a lot of dinners. There's not a lot of entertainment. There's not a lot of things that don't pertain to the business. You want to show in your books that your money is getting reinvested back into it, into purchasing more cars, into perfecting your systems, making sure that you are a reliable business person and a reliable business owner. And the reason why I'm saying this is that typically banks, credit unions, all those, they're going to require about 6 to 12 months of financials. And when I'm saying financials, you want to get some sort of software that will help you keep track of the financials. Whether if it's QuickBooks, whether if it's, I think Oracle is another one. I use QuickBooks personally, so that's my favorite, but you'll want to make sure that you have a software where you can track, okay, here's all my income, here's all my expenses, here is my profit. Essentially, it's called a profit and loss statement. This is a big thing that the banks, the credit unions, any lenders want to see before they would give you any more money, especially if you're just starting out. So if you started with 0 cars, you go out, you personally finance 5 cars. If you can show that it's like, okay, total, I have $5,000 of revenue that comes in, that equates to, let's say, $3,000 worth of profit or $2,500 worth of profit. Okay, now a bank sees that and it's like, okay, well, he has some decent profit that's coming in off of this. Let's say if we gave him more money and he gets $20,000, then that would equate to around $10,000 or $12,000 worth of profit, right? You want them to be confident in the way that you run your business. If they're not confident in you, because when these banks and credit unions and everything give money, they're giving money to, of course, to the idea, but also to the person that's executing. I always talk about with all my friends, there are a ton of people that have great ideas. It's a great idea to get a car, put it on the platform, make a little bit of money. What everybody doesn't have is execution. All right, so that's really the big thing when it comes to financial institutions, is to make sure that they trust you and they trust your execution. Because if they trust your execution, and let's say they give you $100,000 and you pay back that $100,000 within 2 years, plus they get their interest, they're happy with you. They trust you. Now they're willing to give you more money because they know they're going to get a return. And the best thing for you is that you get to continue to scale your business. Now, last big relationship that you want to have is with some sort of technology provider. When I'm saying technology provider, specifically, I'm talking about in reference to trackers. Trackers are massive. Also, in regards to this whole thing, you want to have a relationship with somebody that can install your trackers. So whether that's someone that's really good with technology, typically it's going to be like stereo shops and things like that. You'll find somebody that will know how to install a tracker. That's going to be a huge relationship to have, because every vehicle that we have has a tracker in it. We don't have any vehicles that don't. So that means every vehicle that we get, of course, we have to purchase the tracker. So we have a relationship with the tracking company, and we have a relationship with the person that installs it. Next thing that I want to talk to you guys about is in reference to perfecting the systems that you have in place. What does that look like? First of all, that's going to look like your automations and everything. You want those to be tip top. When you're looking at your pricing, you want to make sure that you're adjusting it on a daily to weekly basis, depending on what market that you're in. And another big thing is when it comes to hiring people to do the tasks that you typically do. Now, we have a car manager now. He's outstanding. He's really doing a great job. Now, you may ask, what are the big things that he has to do? When you have under 10 cars, I wouldn't really say that this turns into a full-time thing. Once you get over 10, it does. And what do the daily tasks look like? Number one, every car has to be checked in and checked out, which essentially means there has to be before pictures of the cars that were taken there has to be after pictures of the cars that were taken. Now, to give you guys a little golden nugget here, the pictures, specifically the before pictures and the after, they have to be taken within 24 hours before the trip. If they are taken longer than 24 hours, then Turo will actually not cover your car if there's an accident, right? So if there's an accident and you don't take pictures until 32 hours after, then they won't cover it because they'll say, well, how do we know that was the guest? That might have been you, whatever. So a little golden nugget for you to have there. But that's a big thing. So checking in the cars, checking out the cars. Another big thing is that we clean all the cars after every trip. That's something that has to be done. When you're going with that kind of volume, you're going to get so many messages from guests that it starts to get a little overwhelming. So somebody has to answer those messages. The automated messages help, but in order to maintain that rating, you actually have to be communicating with your guests. That's another huge part of it. Now, a massive thing that our managers helped us out with is when it comes to starting insurance claims and going through that whole process. It's not a quick thing. Just like I said, typically it'll take about a month, and it does take a lot of going back and forth. So having that team member has made such a world's difference, because now instead of running around doing all those things, which are all super important, that's why I'm advocating for a team member, it gives you more time where instead of working in the business, you get to work on the business. When I say work on the business, what does that look like? It looks like scaling. Okay, how can I go out and keep buying more cars? How can I keep building my financing relationship so I actually have money to acquire more cars? How can I better my relationship with my technology companies so the turn time between when I buy a vehicle to when a vehicle is on the road is as short as possible? Those are the biggest things that you want to be working on as the business owner. Now, of course, when you start, you got to get into the nitty gritty. I mean, you have to understand the day-to-day operations of the business, how that works and everything, so that when you do hire somebody, you know exactly what tasks they need to be doing, and you know what it looks like when they're doing really well versus when they're doing really poorly. Because of course, no one's ever going to care about the business like you, because you're the one that started it. But if you do want to scale your business, you want it to be a business that brings in $500K, that brings in $1 million a year, then you have to get team members. And the last thing that I really want to talk about in reference to scaling, this is really more of a mindset thing, is making sure that you have a calendar and that you have your days planned out. I do it a week in advance. So Sunday is really my big recentering day. On Sunday, I'm planning out my whole schedule, right? So I know what I'm doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, specifically in reference to work and in reference to my personal life. That way, when you plan it a week in advance, you know that you're not missing anything, right? So if you know that you really want to work on your relationship with the financing companies and everything, then it's like, okay, Tuesday, I set up a time where I'm going to make sure all of my financials are in order. Now, when Tuesday comes along, you're not just sitting around waiting for, let's say, the day-to-day tasks to come up. Like, okay, I know I got to check in 20 cars, I got to do this, I got to do that. Then you lose track on the big picture things that are actually going to allow you to have the financial freedom that you want to have. So that's why that planning has really made a big difference in my life, specifically planning a week in advance. So I would really advocate that. And really, to close it out, thank you so much for watching the video. You guys don't want to miss anything. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.